In northern Alaska, global warming has caused the polar ice caps to melt rapidly. With the ice getting thinner and thinner, a creature that has been frozen for years finally awakens, revealing itself to be Wyvern, the legendary ice dragon. Nearby, a fisherman is preparing the fish he caught by the lake, but ends up injuring his finger while removing the bones. The guy then goes into the water to clean the wound, but as soon as a drop of blood falls into the lake, the ice dragon appears, completely hungry. The fisherman tries to escape, but ends up cornered and completely devoured by the huge creature. Meanwhile, in the town of Beaver Mills, the routine continues as normal, but the new residents are finding it difficult to adapt to the long days and nights of the region. One of these newcomers is Jake, a truck driver who, after an accident that took the life of his brother, tries to move on by working as a carpenter. It doesn't take long for the new resident to catch people's attention, especially Claire, who works in a local diner. When she sees Jake fixing the front of her store, she decides to bring him a coffee, but is interrupted by David, the town doctor. As well as taking the coffee that was meant for Jake, the guy invites her to a medical convention in the next town. As before, Claire refuses the invitation, which angers David and he leaves. Afterwards, the young woman apologizes to Jake for the doctor taking his coffee, and invites him to have something to eat as a thank you for his service. Jake accepts, and inside the diner, he meets Edna, a lady who always orders 2 breakfasts. One of them is put on the table for her friend, who, like Jake's brother, also perished recently, but Edna still hasn't gotten over the loss. Seeing that Jake is going through the same thing, Claire tries to console him, saying how sorry she is for what happened to his brother. However, the truck driver still can't talk about it, and after having his coffee, he hurries home. Meanwhile, in another part of town, Colonel Travis has just woken up and is going to take some food to his dog. However, he is surprised when a moose head suddenly falls from the sky, right in front of his garden. This story soon becomes news and is reported by Hampton, a young woman who works at the Beaver Mills radio station. Everyone believes it was a sick prank to take advantage of the arrival of the town's festival, when in fact it was an omen of a threat to come. Jake doesn't take the news seriously and heads back to his trailer, when he is surprised by a visit from Dr. David. He offers to treat the truck driver's hand, as he has noticed that he has been in severe pain since the accident on the road. However, as soon as the treatment is finished, David makes it clear that his real intention is to find out if Jake is interested in Claire. Although he has feelings for her, he denies it, saying that when he receives the insurance money for the accident, he will move to another city. The doctor is pleased to hear this and leaves, leaving the treatment payment for free. On the way back, David decides to stop in the forest to do his business, when he hears a loud sound coming from above the trees. When he looks closer, he comes across the ice dragon, which pulls up in front of the doctor's car and advances towards him. David then runs to hide among the trees, and after waiting a while, realizes that the dragon has gone. The doctor hurries back to his car, but just as he was about to start it, the creature returns and attacks him with a bite. The next day, a local resident called Hass goes hunting in the forest when he notices a different kind of droppings on the ground. Soon afterwards, the wyvern dragon appears in front of him and tries to attack him, but he shoots back with his gun. The sound of the shots is heard by Sheriff Dawson, who was talking to Jake in front of the diner and goes off to investigate where the shots are coming from. Jake decides to go along and the two of them head down the road, when they find Hass in a state of panic. He tells them that he saw a monster from another world in the woods, and very nearly got eaten by it. As expected, the sheriff doesn't believe this story and sends him back to his car to give his statement at the police station. However, Jake sees an arm lying in the forest and immediately recognizes the shirt sleeve and watch belonging to Dr. David. This incident doesn't look like just any old crime and the sheriff demands further explanations from Hass. However, he again says that he was attacked by a monster from the heavens. With no further evidence of the crime, the sheriff sends out a call to all the residents, as he wants to hold an emergency meeting at Claire's diner. Minutes later, the meeting begins and the sheriff warns that the town is being attacked by an unknown type of predator. Although he remains skeptical about Hass's story, he asks the residents to take extra care and not to panic. However, in the middle of the meeting, Deputy Susie ends up bringing the doctor's arm, which only makes everyone even more apprehensive. The sheriff becomes enraged and orders the woman back to the police station, as well as warning the residents that any trip to the forest is forbidden. Finally, he advises everyone to protect themselves in their homes and keep their livestock under lock and key until the mystery is solved. Despite the risks, the locals ask if the town festival will still take place, as it is one of the most eagerly awaited events of the year. Jake suggests that it be postponed until they find the predator, but the sheriff announces that the festival will take place, as he doesn't want to cause hysteria in the town. At the end of the meeting, Sheriff Dawson receives another call about another resident, named Thomas, who has been attacked on his farm. While he goes to attend to the incident, far-away Colonel Travis uses his binoculars to find out who threw the moose head on his lawn. During the search, he spots the huge dragon flying over the area and immediately drives off to alert the authorities. In the middle of the road, he comes across the monster again, and armed with his gun, Travis gets out of the car and fires at the creature, but fails to hit it. After this, the colonel rushes into town and goes to tell Deputy Susie about what he has seen. He believes they are alien reptiles that have invaded the world, but the policewoman thinks he's going mad and tells him to go home. Nevertheless, she decides to tell the sheriff, but he has just arrived at Thomas's farm and doesn't hear her call. As he enters the stable, he calls out for the owner of the property, but ends up slipping in a pool of blood. When he looks over, he sees Thomas's body on the ground, and because he's not used to cases like this, the man gets sick and ends up fainting. Just then, Colonel Travis rushes over to Hampton and asks her to make an emergency announcement about the monster. However, the young woman refuses, as she needs authorization from the government to make this kind of call. Irritated, the colonel tries to ask for help from Farley, one of the locals who is preparing the food for the festival, but like the others, he doesn't believe this story about flying reptilian aliens. However, the locals soon discover that this is all true when the ice dragon lands in the town, in front of the radio station. Seeing the huge creature, Hampton doesn't think twice and tries to send out an emergency call for reinforcements. However, the creature ends up destroying the town's electricity pylons, disabling the entire radio system. Back at Thomas's farm, Sheriff Dawson regains his senses and hurries to call Susie on the radio, telling her to send all the residents back to their homes. The deputy obeys the order, and using a megaphone, tells everyone about the sheriff's orders. To her misfortune, the huge dragon appears flying in the sky, and with a swoop, it attacks Deputy Susie with its claws, leaving her in pieces. All the townspeople panic at the sight of the monster and general confusion ensues. Inside the diner, Claire and Jake hear the screams, and through the window, they see the ice dragon approaching. With its powerful bite, the creature destroys the front door and tries to break in, with the survivors hiding behind tables. Fortunately, the dragon stops attacking and leaves, but it begins to capture and devour the residents around the town. Shortly afterwards, Hampton and Farley also appear at the diner and warn that the creature is devouring the inhabitants everywhere. As absurd as this sounds, Claire believes it to be a dragon, according to ancient legends and myths. Hampton thinks it's crazy, but tells him that every country has different legends about this mystical being. According to the Norse people, a dragon like this is called a wyvern, known for coming straight out of the underworld and for having a voracious hunger. Initially, this dragon was supposed to feed only on criminals, but soon it began to devour everyone, without distinction. According to Norse legend, the dragon attacked the god Odin and the god punished it by locking it inside a huge polar ice cap. Now that the world is experiencing uncontrolled warming, it's possible that Wyvern's prison has been melted and the creature released. Claire asks how Hass knows all this, and he replies that his father came from Norway to Alaska and knew these legends. He also tells her that when the two of them went fishing, he had the impression of hearing roars whenever the mountains of ice melted. Finally, Hass's father suspected that this roar came from the wyvern, waiting for the right moment to escape and wreak havoc on the world. This being the only possible theory to explain the creature's existence, Jake asks if the legend talks about a way to destroy the wyvern. Hass only tells him that the ancient Vikings made human sacrifices to calm the creature, but everyone quickly dismisses this idea. Jake then decides to go after the sheriff and call for reinforcements, with Claire going along to help him. Along the road, the two see the dragon flying over and landing in a part of the forest. Even though it's risky, Jake decides to take a closer look at the monster to see if he can find its hiding place. At the same time, on another part of the road, Colonel Travis continues his search for the creature when he sees a trailer stopped in the middle of the road. The vehicle appears to be empty, but there are bloodstains all over it, indicating that there has been a confrontation. The colonel goes to take a closer look, and to his horror, he finds other cars on the road, completely destroyed and with the victims missing. Back at the diner, Hampton tries to use the radio to call the authorities for help, but the system still doesn't work. Seconds later, the sheriff arrives in town, only to find the place destroyed and a huge pool of blood near Susie's megaphone. Fearing the worst, he tries to contact the police on his communicator when he sees the dragon flying towards him. Farley sees everything and calls the sheriff to hide in the diner, but just as he was about to enter, the monster attacks him and takes Dawson's body away. In the meantime, Jake arrives at the spot where he saw the dragon land and decides to take a look, but first he hands Claire a pistol. He asks the young woman to wait for him in the car and goes alone to the place where he saw the dragon land, where he finds a nest made of debris. Meanwhile, Claire continues to wait for him, but soon she sees the dragon approaching the car. The young woman tries to hide her presence, but the dragon rips off the door and prepares to devour her, with Claire fighting back by unloading her pistol at the creature. Jake hears the sound of gunfire and runs to help her, but finds the car empty and no sign of the dragon anywhere. Fortunately, Claire appears in the middle of the forest, having narrowly escaped the creature. Seconds later, Colonel Travis appears on the scene after following the sound of gunfire and tells him about the cars scattered on the road. He believes that the dragon intends to keep all the residents trapped in the town, to serve as its food source. The only way to save the survivors is to eliminate the creature, but the colonel doesn't believe they can do it alone. The three of them rush back to town and Jake uses the communicator to talk to Hampton, saying that he needs to talk to the sheriff to ask for reinforcements. Tragically, Hampton tells him that he too has been eliminated by the ice dragon and Jake tries to think of another plan. Minutes later, the trio make it back to the diner and tell them about the location of the monster's nest. Even so, they don't have enough weapons to fight the dragon and need to get in touch to ask for help. With the phone lines down, Hampton remembers the radio in her studio, but she'll need a more powerful antenna to make contact. She tells him that there is an antenna in the store nearby and the two set off to get it and connect it to the radio. On the way, they find the sheriff's vehicle and collect the weapons and ammunition inside the car, handing them all over to the colonel for him to distribute among the other survivors. After that, the pair head to the store and Jake has to climb up to the roof to remove the antenna, which is held on by 4 screws. Jake begins to remove them one by one, but he is completely exposed and the dragon reappears, flying towards him. With only 1 screw left, Hampton pulls out a pistol and fires at the monster, giving Jake time to remove the antenna and hand it to her. Then the two of them rush back to the diner, and narrowly miss being attacked by the ice dragon. As soon as they enter the diner, Hampton sets up the antenna and connects the radio, with Jake trying to tune it to the nearest frequency. After a few attempts, he manages to talk to an Alaskan security agent, but the signal is weak and the guy asks what's going on. Knowing that no one would believe the story of a dragon attacking the town, Jake impersonates Sheriff Dawson and tells him that there has been a gas explosion. Because of this, they are out of contact and need urgent reinforcements before something worse happens. However, the radio signal is interrupted and they are unable to confirm with the officer whether reinforcements will be sent. Now that they are on their own, Jake decides to take on the dragon and will need everyone's help to collect as many weapons as possible. The survivors agree with the idea and start preparing their weapons for the confrontation. Farley and Hess go to get more fuel for the cars when they see the dragon reappear on top of one of the houses. Farley panics and is hit by the tip of the monster's tail, seriously wounded. Luckily, Jake rushes to his rescue and gets him back to the diner before it's too late. The group then continue their plan of attack, without suspecting that in the dragon's nest, it is revealed that Dr. David is still alive. Using his tie as a tourniquet, he manages to bandage off the place where he lost his arm. When he gets up, the doctor finds the monster's eggs inside the nest. Before he can do anything, the dragon appears before him, but instead of devouring him, it grabs him with its fangs and takes him back to the city. In the meantime, the group continues to prepare for the attack and Claire takes the opportunity to have a coffee with Jake and rest for a while. He thanks her for the gesture and decides to tell her the story of the accident that took his brother's life. He reveals that, during a work trip as a truck driver, he spent 4 days driving without sleep on a dangerous and slippery road. His brother was with him, but because he had a bad cold, Jake didn't let him drive and carried on with his work. Unluckily for both of them, the truck ended up skidding on a risky stretch of road, causing the back of the vehicle to crash into the cab. When the truck overturned, freezing water began to pour in and the two struggled to survive in the bitter cold. Jake did his best to hold on to his brother and get him out, but he ended up dislocating his hand on impact and couldn't stand the low temperature in the cab. In his desperation, he ended up letting go of his brother's arm, who had no chance of survival. After the rescue, Jake blamed himself for what had happened, believing that his greed for payment for the service, coupled with the act of letting go of his brother's arm, had led to the tragic end. Claire, however, says that none of this was his fault, because there was no way of predicting that accident, just as there was no way of anticipating the dragon's attack. Their conversation is then interrupted when Hess announces that Wyvern is back. The group goes out to take a closer look and sees the dragon leave David on the ground, as if it were a lure to attract the survivors. Even though he knows it's a trap, Jake goes out to help him, and when the dragon tries to attack him, he fires his pistol at the monster. Hess and the colonel also shoot to help their companion, but the dragon continues to approach rapidly and is about to reach Jake. Farley then decides to help, and despite his wound, he runs towards the monster and tries to lure it away from his friends, The plan works and Jake manages to get David to the cafe, but the dragon captures Farley and returns with his body to the nest. The group mourns the loss of yet another companion, but soon the radio picks up a message from the safety of Alaska, announcing that a rescue helicopter has been sent. However, as the ship begins to approach the city, the dragon reappears and attacks it from behind, destroying the helicopter and eliminating the pilot. Once again, the group is on its own and Claire calls for her friends, as David is losing his life from his injuries. Before his last breath, he gives the group some important information, saying that he saw 3 dragon eggs inside the nest. Seeing that the situation is becoming more and more critical, Jake asks the group to go into the forest and finish off the dragon and its eggs, before more monsters show up to destroy the town. Jake asks Edna to stay at the diner while the rest of the group sets off to confront this threat. After a long journey, they reach the forest and find a power generator among the rubble of the nest. With this, they can generate an electric charge strong enough to electrocute the dragon, destroying it along with its eggs. Hampton then uses his knowledge of electronics to reconnect the generator, and once everything is ready, Haas tries to activate it by pulling the crank. However, just as he was about to do so, the dragon lands on the spot and hits him with its sharp tail. Jake, the Colonel and Claire shoot at the creature, while Hampton tries to activate the mechanism, but despite her efforts, the trap doesn't work and the dragon manages to escape before turning on the generator. After this failure, the group sees Haas's body, already lifeless, and the Colonel becomes enraged and starts shooting at the eggs. However, Jake stops him, saying that they could still serve as bait to attract the monster. So the group continues along the road, and halfway there, they come across more cars stopped on the road. One of them is a huge cargo truck and Jake has the idea of using it to lead the dragon into a trap. He decides to do it alone, as he doesn't want to risk the lives of any other residents, especially Claire. Once his friends are on their way back to town, Jake puts the eggs in the cab and speeds down the road, honking the horn all the time to attract the dragon. After a few kilometers, the creature finally takes the bait and sets off to attack the truck and rescue the eggs. In an unexpected maneuver, Jake brakes the vehicle abruptly, causing the dragon to crash into the back of the truck. He then accelerates the truck again, and as soon as the creature recovers from the blow, it chases him again and positions itself in front of the windshield. Jake doesn't give up and keeps going, when he comes across a huge cliff up ahead. With the truck going at full speed, Jake jumps out of the cab and lets the vehicle go over the cliff, taking the dragon and its eggs with it. Thanks to this, the fall causes the truck to explode, disintegrating the monster and its chicks, ridding the Alaskan region of the fearsome ice dragon. In the center of town, all the survivors, especially Claire, anxiously await Jake's return. Shortly afterwards, the truck driver shows up and tells his friends that the threat is over and that he has decided to stay in Beaver Mills with Claire for a while longer. So what did you think of this movie? Leave it in the comments below. And if you liked the video, like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you next time.